I was 14 when my world ended. One minute, my mom was there, alive, real, laughing at something stupid I'd said at breakfast. And the next, she wasn't. Just a phone call, a crash, a stranger's voice on the other end telling me they were sorry. I remember sitting on the kitchen floor after that call, my back against the fridge, my fingers digging into the tile as if I could hold on to something solid. The house was too quiet, too still, like it had died with her. My father and I had been distant long before she was gone, but after, it was like he didn't know what to do with me. So he did nothing. And then Karen stepped in. He had been seeing her for a while, though I barely paid attention to it before. I should have. Maybe then I would have been prepared. She moved fast. Within months, she was running the house, rearranging furniture, throwing out old things she thought we didn't need. Things that had belonged to my mom. Things that had belonged to us. I came home from school one day to find the family photos missing from the hallway. The ones with my mom's face in them. Where are the pictures? I had asked, my stomach twisting. Karen had smiled. All teeth. I thought it was time for a fresh start. Your dad agreed. I looked at him, waiting for him to say something. To stop this. But he didn't. He just nodded. Like it wasn't a big deal. Like she hadn't just erased my mother from the walls of our home. I barely had time to process it before the next blow came. We're moving, my father said one night over dinner. Charleston. It's a great opportunity and he hesitated, not looking at me, we think it'll be good for you too. I knew then it wasn't really his decision. It was hers. I wanted to fight. I wanted to scream that I wouldn't go. But I was 14, and she had already won. So I packed my bags and left the only home I had ever known. And Charleston? That was when the real hell began. Karen had a son, Travis, a year younger than me, but already entitled in a way I could never understand. Everything came easy for him. Not because he earned it, but because Karen made it happen. She pulled strings to get him on the football team, in the best classes, even landed him the lead role in the school play. And when things didn't go his way, she fixed it. At first, I tried to stay out of it. But Karen didn't just want me to tolerate Travis. She wanted me to be like him. You should follow your brother's example, she'd say, always emphasizing brother like she could force it into reality. Travis worked so hard. You could learn something from him. I gritted my teeth through it, counting the years until I could leave. Until I could be free of her, of that house, of all of it. Then I met Sophia. She wasn't just my girlfriend. She was home. She listened. She saw me in a way no one had since my mom. When I was with her, I didn't feel like the broken kid in someone else's house. I felt real. So, of course, Travis wanted her too. At first, it was small things. Him laughing too loud at her jokes. Finding reasons to be around when I brought her over. Then it got weirder. Once, I caught him staring at her, this strange, almost desperate look on his face. When he saw me watching, he smirked, but there was something off about it. Relax, man, he said. Not my fault if she likes me better. I warned him, told him to back off. He didn't. And when Karen saw her precious son pining after something he couldn't have, she decided to do what she always did. She tried to make the problem disappear. One evening, my father called me into his office. He looked uncomfortable, his hands folded on the desk like he was bracing for impact. Nick, he started. Karen and I have been talking, and we think it would be best if you ended things with Sophia. I blinked. Excuse me? It's not fair to Travis, he continued, his voice careful. He's struggling, and your relationship is distracting him. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was insane. You're joking, right? He didn't laugh. You seriously want me to break up with my girlfriend because Travis has a crush on her? Nick, we're just trying to keep the peace. A girl isn't worth ruining your relationship with your family. And there it was. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. You're right, I said, my voice shaking. A girl isn't worth ruining my relationship with my family. Relief flickered across his face. But you and Karen aren't my family. I packed that night. No drawn-out arguments, no dramatic goodbyes. I just left, changed my number, moved in with Sophia. For the first time in years, I felt free. 12 years. That's how long it had been since I last spoke to my father. 12 years of silence, of moving forward, of building a life that didn't include him, Karen, or Travis. And then, one afternoon, Travis showed up at my doorstep. I almost didn't recognize him. He looked thinner, his face more hollow. The cocky smirk he always wore when we were younger was gone, replaced by something uncertain. I didn't invite him in right away. Instead, I stood in the doorway, gripping the frame like it was the only thing keeping me from slamming the door in his face. "Nick," he said, shifting awkwardly. "Hey." I stared at him, saying nothing. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. I know this is weird. Me showing up like this. That was an understatement. How did you find me?" My voice was flat, unreadable. He hesitated. "Social media." Of course. Sophia was in the kitchen, out of sight, but I could feel her presence. She must have heard the door, and I knew if she saw Travis, she wouldn't be happy. "Can I come in?" he asked. I almost laughed. "You're serious?" He winced. "Look, I know I'm probably the last person you want to see, but I need to talk to you. Please." Something in his voice gave me pause. 12 years ago, I would have given anything to hear an apology from him. Back then, I wanted him to admit it, to acknowledge everything he had done, everything Karen had done. But now, I wasn't sure I cared. Still, I stepped aside. 5 minutes, I said, my voice tight. He walked in cautiously, looking around like he didn't quite believe I had built a life without him. I led him to the living room, but I didn't sit. Neither did he. "You've got a nice place," he said, eyes scanning the photos on the shelf. Our wedding picture, a vacation photo from Italy, and one of my mom, the only one I had left of her. I crossed my arms. "What do you want, Travis?" He let out a slow breath. "I messed up," he admitted. "After you left, things got weird. The house felt different." "Mom," he caught himself. "Karen was relieved when you were gone. She acted like you'd never existed." That wasn't surprising. But me? His jaw tightened. "I don't know. It didn't feel right. I thought," he shook his head, "I thought I wanted you gone. But once you were, everything just felt off." I studied him, waiting for the angle, the manipulation. But he wasn't playing a game this time. He looked lost. "Why are you here, Travis?" He ran a hand through his hair. "I need help." Of course he did. I let out a dry laugh. "Help? From me?" He flinched, but didn't argue. "I know. I deserve that. But, listen, things went to shit after you left. Mom kept pushing me to be, I don't know, whatever version of me she thought I was supposed to be. But I couldn't do it. I kept screwing up. I barely got into college, then dropped out. She lost it. Told me I was a failure. A waste. I said nothing. She kicked me out," he muttered. "Said she wasn't wasting another dime on me. That should have made me feel vindicated. But instead, I felt nothing. I spent the next few years bouncing from place to place," he continued. "Couch surfing, doing odd jobs. I tried to make it work, but I never got my shit together. And now," he exhaled, shoulders slumping. "Now, I've got nothing." Silence. "I looked you up," he admitted. "Saw you and Sophia are doing well. I guess you were right to leave." His voice was quiet, almost like he was talking to himself. "I'm not here to beg for money," he added quickly. I don't know. I thought maybe you could help me find a job. I'm in town looking for work, and I figured." He trailed off. I stared at him. Travis, the same kid who once made my life hell, who let Karen push me out of my own home, who never once stood up for me, even when he knew what she was doing. Now, he was standing in my house, asking me for help. I should have told him to leave. But instead, I thought about my father. I thought about the years I spent hating him for never standing up to Karen, for letting her destroy everything, for letting her rewrite the past however she wanted. Travis was weak, just like my father had been. But weakness wasn't the same as cruelty. "I don't know if I can help you," I admitted. "But I'll think about it." He nodded, looking almost relieved. "I appreciate it, man." I didn't say anything as he turned toward the door. But as he stepped out, something nagged at me. "Travis." He paused, turning back. "Do you still talk to Karen?" His jaw tightened. No, he said after a long moment. Haven't in years. She's on her own now. And then he left. I didn't tell Sophia about Travis right away. I wasn't sure why. Maybe part of me knew how she'd react. Maybe I was still trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do with him showing up after all these years. But a few days later, over dinner, I caught myself zoning out, pushing food around my plate without eating. Sophia set her fork down. All right, she said. What's going on? I hesitated. She raised an eyebrow. Nick, I sighed, leaning back in my chair. Travis came by. Her whole body tensed. When? A few days ago. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. Jesus, Nick, and you're just now telling me? I didn't know how to bring it up, I admitted. She folded her arms. What did he want? I hesitated. Help. A job. Said he's been struggling for years. That Karen threw him out when he dropped out of college. Sophia scoffed. Wow, what a shock. She turned on him the second he stopped being useful. I ran a hand through my hair. Yeah. She studied me, her expression unreadable. And? What did you tell him? I said I'd think about it. She frowned. You're not actually considering it, are you? I didn't answer. She let out a slow breath. Nick, I get it. You're a good person. But Travis? He never gave a damn about you before. And now, after all this time, he suddenly wants your help. I know, I muttered. Do you? She leaned forward, her voice softer now. Because I remember what it was like back then. The way he treated you. The way Karen treated you. And he just let it happen. I clenched my jaw. I know. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then, finally, she sighed. Just be careful. I nodded. The next day, I texted Travis. Meet me at the diner on 5th, 6 p.m. He answered almost immediately. I'll be there. When I arrived, he was already sitting in a booth, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. He looked up when I slid into the seat across from him, his face cautious. You came, he said. I ignored that. I talked to a guy I know, Mark. He manages a warehouse on the south side. They're hiring for general labor. Nothing fancy, but it's steady. Travis blinked. You do that for me? I studied him. I'm not doing anything for you. I'm giving you a chance. You screw this up, that's on you. He nodded quickly. I won't. I swear, man. I just need something to get back on my feet. I still wasn't sure I believed him, but I gave him the address. Sophia wasn't thrilled when I told her later. You actually helped him, she said, crossing her arms. I didn't help him, I corrected. I gave him a shot. What he does with it is up to him. She exhaled, shaking her head. I just don't want you to get burned. Me neither. A week passed. Then 2. I expected to hear that Travis had screwed up, that he got fired, quit, did something to prove that he hadn't changed. But instead, he sent me short updates. First paycheck today. Feels weird actually having money again. Got my own place. It's small, but it's mine. I didn't always respond, but I read every message. Then, one evening, he sent something different. I need to tell you something. Can we meet? I hesitated. About what? Mom. My stomach twisted. I sat staring at the screen for a long time before finally typing. Where? He sent me an address. I showed Sophia. Nick. She said cautiously. I have to know, I said. She studied me for a long moment, then finally nodded. Okay, but if he's playing games. I know, I said. I won't let him. The next day, I drove to the coffee shop Travis had picked. He was already there, drumming his fingers against the table. When I sat down, he exhaled. I don't know how to start this, he admitted. Try the beginning, I said. He nodded. After Mom kicked me out, I didn't talk to her for a long time. I thought maybe she'd come around. She didn't. I didn't say anything. He hesitated. I saw her a few months ago, by accident. She was at the grocery store, and she looked different. Different how? He swallowed. Older. Weaker. Like she wasn't in control anymore. I almost laughed. Karen? Losing control? Yeah, he muttered. She's alone, Nick. Completely. She burned every bridge. Even Dad left her. I stiffened. Dad left? Travis nodded. He walked out years ago. No one knows where he went. I leaned back, processing that. And Karen? I asked finally. Travis hesitated. She's sick, he admitted. Cancer. Stage 4. I felt nothing. Travis watched me carefully. I thought you should know. I should have cared. I should have felt something, but I didn't. I stood up. Nick? I don't care, I said. She made her choices. She can live with them. Travis opened his mouth, then closed it. Yeah, he said finally, voice quiet. I figured you'd say that. And for the first time, I saw it in his eyes, acceptance. He wasn't trying to fix things. He wasn't asking for anything. He was just letting me go. And I walked away. I thought that was it. I had walked away. Closed the door. Karen was dying, and I didn't care. And yet, for the next few days, I couldn't shake it. It lingered in the back of my mind, creeping in at odd moments, while I was driving, while I was making coffee, while Sophia was talking to me and I realized I hadn't heard a word she'd said. It wasn't guilt. I didn't owe Karen anything. But there was something else, something unfinished. I didn't tell Sophia right away when the call started. The first one was from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Nick, a woman's voice said. My name is Lisa. I'm Karen's nurse. A pause. She's been asking for you. I deleted it. Then another call. Another voicemail. Nick, I know you don't want to hear this, but she doesn't have much time. I ignored it. Then, late one night, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Travis. She's in hospice. She keeps asking for you. Just come say your piece and be done with it. I stared at the message for a long time. Sophia noticed. What is it? I hesitated. Then, finally, I said, Karen wants to see me. She raised an eyebrow. And I don't know if I should go. Sophia was quiet for a moment. Then she exhaled, setting her book aside. Do you want to go? I shrugged. I don't know. Part of me just wants to let it be. Let her rot alone the way she left me. Sophia studied me. Then why are you still thinking about it? I ran a hand over my face. She reached across the couch, taking my hand. Nick, if you go, it doesn't have to be for her, she said gently. It can be for you. So you don't carry this around for the rest of your life. I didn't answer. But the next day, I drove to the hospice center. It smelled like antiseptic and old air. The kind of place where people came to wait for the inevitable. Lisa, the nurse who had called me, met me at the front desk. She was younger than I expected, maybe in her late 30s, with tired but kind eyes. You came, she said, like she hadn't expected me to. Where is she? She led me down a dimly lit hallway. She's weak, but she's lucid. When we reached the door, she hesitated. If you need anything? I won't, I said, and then I stepped inside. Karen was a shell of the woman I remembered. Her once perfectly maintained hair was thin and gray, her sharp eyes dull and sunken. She looked small. She turned her head when she heard me, and for a second, something flickered across her face. Fear. Not of me. Of the end. Nick, she rasped. I didn't move closer. You wanted to see me? My voice was flat. She swallowed, struggling to breathe. I made mistakes. I raised an eyebrow. That's one way to put it. Her lips twitched like she wanted to laugh. Or cry. You hate me, she whispered. I didn't answer. She let out a slow, rattling breath. I deserve that. Damn right you do. She shifted slightly, her fingers twitching against the blanket like she wanted to reach for something. I ruined everything, she murmured. I thought I was protecting my family. I thought if I controlled everything, I could make life perfect. Her eyes flicked up to mine. But I was wrong. I clenched my jaw. You weren't protecting anyone, I said. You were trying to control us. To control me. And when you couldn't, you threw me away. She flinched, but she didn't argue. Her breaths were coming slower now. Nick, she whispered. I need to tell you something. I didn't move. She took a shaky breath. Your father, he didn't want you to leave. I felt something cold grip my chest. Bullshit, I said automatically, but she shook her head. He loved you. He was just weak. I swallowed, my throat tight. Where is he? She hesitated. Then, so softly I almost didn't hear it, she whispered, I don't know. Something inside me twisted. Karen had always been a liar, a manipulator. But this felt real. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because I don't want to die with it. I stared at her. For years, I had imagined this moment. I had pictured myself standing over her, saying nothing as she begged for forgiveness she didn't deserve. But now that I was here, she wasn't begging. She was just letting go. I swallowed hard. Goodbye, Karen. Her eyes fluttered closed. I turned and walked out of the room. Karen died 3 days later. I didn't go to the funeral. Travis did. He texted me afterward, saying it was small, just a handful of people, mostly distant relatives who probably felt obligated to show up. No speeches, no outpouring of grief. Just a quiet, unremarkable ending for a woman who had spent her whole life trying to control everything, only to die with nothing. I thought that would be the end of it, and for a while it was. Weeks passed. Life moved on. Sophia and I settled back into our routine, and I pushed it all to the back of my mind. Then, one afternoon, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. I almost tossed it without opening it, but something stopped me. The handwriting on the envelope, it was familiar. Too familiar. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and as soon as I unfolded it, my stomach twisted. My father's handwriting. Nick, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I don't even know if it will reach you. But if it does, I need you to know something. I was a coward. I let her push you away. I let her turn me into someone I didn't recognize. And I have spent every single day regretting it. I should have stopped her. I should have fought for you. But I didn't. I was too afraid of losing everything. So I lost you instead. You were the best thing I ever had, and I let you go. And I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't expect it. But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. I don't know where I'll be when you read this, but I hope you're happy, Nick. I hope you built the life you always deserved. I'm sorry. No signature. No contact information. Just his words. I sat there for a long time, gripping the edges of the paper like it might disappear if I let go. For years, I had convinced myself that my father didn't care, that he had chosen Karen over me, that he had never looked back. And now, sitting in my kitchen, reading this, I didn't know what to do with it. I felt Sophia's presence before she spoke. You okay? I swallowed hard. It's from my dad. She sat beside me, scanning the letter. When she finished, she didn't say anything right away. Then she reached over, covering my hand with hers. Do you think you'll try to find him? I let out a slow breath. I don't know. And I didn't. Because part of me, the part that had spent years carrying this weight, was afraid. Afraid that if I searched for him, I'd find nothing. That this letter was the last piece of him I'd ever get. Or worse, that I'd find him, and it wouldn't change anything. That I'd look him in the eye and still feel like that 14-year-old kid, standing in a house that was never really his, waiting for a father who would never fight for him. Sophia squeezed my hand. You don't have to decide today. I nodded, but the truth was, I didn't know if I'd ever be ready. The letter stayed on the counter for a week. Then 2. I kept telling myself I'd put it away, but I never did. And then, one evening, I found myself typing his name into an online search. Just to see. Just to know. And when the results popped up, my heart nearly stopped. Because there he was. Still alive. Still out there. Waiting.